Well, what do we have here? Obviously, that has gotta be my suspension for the Razor. That's pretty much the last piece of the puzzle for what I'm gonna be doing. Obviously, we still got a lot of fab work to go, so we'll get into that box, show you some of those goodies from Double E Racing, and hopefully we're gonna get this Razor back on all 4 tires. So stick around, I'm gonna show you what's in those boxes, and we're gonna get them thrown on the machine. So as you can see, it is Double E Racing, at least that box, and then the 2 cases below have my shocks in them, which were tuned by Double E Racing. Now, there is a ton of different companies out there. So you got Double E Racing, you got G-Force. I mean, technically you could throw Shock Therapy in there, Schmitty Racing Suspension, MTS, who else? There's so many shock tuning companies out there. I've talked to racer after racer after racer, and all of them say G-Force or Double E Racing. And I called George at Double E Racing first. That was just, I've always seen their content on social media and seen what they do. And honestly, I've seen the record that they have at racing events, and they pretty much dominate King of the Hammers and a lot of the short course racing too. So that's kind of a big thing for me, obviously, and nothing against G-Force. Like they probably have very good tuners as well. But I talked to George, and his customer service blew me out of the water. I've called him time and time again just with questions because, again, I'm new to the racing side of things, at least when it comes to the UTVs. ATV racing was completely different for me. But when it comes to this, there's a lot more that goes into it, and George really knows his stuff. He took the time to really explain everything to me and kind of told me my options, because I've got the dynamic shocks in here, which he did recommend I get rid of the live valve. And I know there's probably Fox engineers out there that can really dial them in, because there's racers like Andrew Carlson, Robert Loyar, I think is how you say his last name. He raced the live valve suspension as well, but George recommended taking that out. I didn't want to do that quite yet because I want to keep the electronic stuff in this Razor just in case I have to go back to kind of putting it back to stock if I would ever sell it, and then I could build like the full race car. But for now, we're keeping the live valve. I know I'm gonna have to really mess with it, and I'll talk about it kind of throughout the video, some of the adjustments that he has added and how he designs the shocks. But that's kind of a quick rundown of what we're getting ready to do. We're gonna pull all that stuff out and show you what all he has done. I'm stoked because I opened one box and they just look so sweet. I think aftermarket shock tunes, just the new springs, everything about them just looks super sick. So I'm gonna quit rambling and we're gonna break into these boxes. We're gonna start with the cases. We'll get into this box here in just a minute. So case number 1, case number 2. If you guys have to ship your suspension or your shocks, I highly recommend some Pew Pew cases, because I picked these up for about 150 bucks at Academy, and I'll show you obviously once I open them up why I chose this option. But it is an upfront investment, but I know I'm gonna have to send these shocks back to Double E eventually because they will have to get rebuilt, but I can reuse these boxes time and time again. And what's awesome about them, voila, you're able to pull out pieces of foam and put your shocks in here to where they're not gonna move around, and you know they're super protected during shipping. I've got it perfectly, all the foam pulled out so those shocks fit exactly how they need to in there. So you can see even my live valve is kind of all off in its own little compartment. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room, but once the top is pushed down onto the shock, then there's foam down here as well. It really sandwiches your shocks in there, and you're not gonna have any issues during shipping. And what I did, which is actually what George told me to do, is there's these little clamps here, or little eyelets, whatever you wanna call them, for like if you're shipping these and you wanna use a padlock, say you've got some Pew Pews in there, you can use a padlock. But what I just did is use some zip ties, zip tie that shut. So then once they got to George, he's able to cut those zip ties and open it up, and you know your shocks and everything are gonna stay put. So that way if a latch comes undone, they don't go flying all over the place in the UPS truck. But just seeing the logo makes me feel like this is legit. I mean, these are completely tuned for short course racing. He shortened them up. I don't know if the shock shaft is shorter or if he did stuff internally, but the shocks are going to be shorter, so the car is going to sit lower. And obviously he went through the valving, did a bunch of work in there, and then he put their high volume end caps on there. Obviously this is the true dual rate setup, so we've got the tender spring up top, crossover rings, same thing on here, the kind of tender spring with your crossovers. And what's interesting about these shocks is George does not use preload to adjust your ride height. He does it all with your crossover rings, which I think is way different than anyone else out there. But obviously he knows what he's doing. He's got a lot of championships under his belt. So he has them pretty much to where he thinks they need to be for the RZR. We might have to do a little bit of fine tuning. So this goes back to their customer service. He actually called me once he had shipped the shocks out and walked me through what I need to do to get them set up. He's like, if I have any questions, call him. He's got a couple things he wants to check. And then ultimately, if I don't get it dialed how I think it needs to be, or if I can't quite get it how he's telling me to do it, he's gonna be at round one at Mid-America. And he's like, well, stop by, we'll get it dialed in. So that is another reason I chose George over, let's say, Shock Therapy or some of those other companies, because he's actually at the track. He's gonna be there, he helps people out. Obviously, he's got people there that he races with and supports, but he's able to also help other customers, which is huge. So go ahead, I guess I can open this other box. Well, I'll show you guys, obviously these, some major stickers. So this is awesome. This one obviously is gonna be pretty much the same thing, just two different shocks, same stuff. But we're gonna go ahead, get these suckers out of there. We're gonna get them bolted on to the RZR. Before we get too deep into it, I wanna show you guys what we got going on here bolt-wise. So I think I mentioned it in one of the previous videos, but I do have the Misfit Garage front or total suspension bolt kit for the RZR. So it comes with everything you need for all the bolts, washers, nuts. These black ones are actually something a little bit special, which is actually from TPR Industries. So it's their Tiger Tooth washer kit. And what these are, might be kind of hard to see on there, but they've got these little teeth on the edge of the washer. And what those are for, which you can weld them in to your shock mounts, but it's for your frame mounts, and those tiger teeth essentially grab into this metal, and then that's what a lot of the weight is then carried is in those washers, not your frame, and then that ends up wallering out your holes. So those tiger teeth washers help to kind of just strengthen up all those frame mounts. I'm not gonna put them on the trailing arm tabs or the A-arm tabs just because those are pretty fresh, and I don't see these being an issue just because these are so much thicker than your frame tabs. But all of the frame tabs, I'll put a tiger washer on either side just to really strengthen that kind of bolted connection up. And then those paired with the brand new bolts from Misfit Garage, sucker's gonna be dialed in. So let's go ahead and get that rear shock put on there and just start ticking away at this thing. We got to get that strap off of there, and honestly, I think this should go pretty quick, so let's give it a go. Alrighty, we got all the shocks put on there. We got them torqued down. Man, those front ones, whew, they suck. So I had to put the bolt from the back side, which obviously I don't love, because if it backs out, it's gonna back out that way. Whereas if you put it in from the front and that nut comes off, it might stay in there. So I'm gonna have to be really careful watching that bolt after every single race this year. But the issue is I put that misfit garage bolt in there, and with the front mounted radiator, that bolt is too long to get into the hole. So you have to come in from the back. So I probably should have just used the stock bolts, but I didn't. So if it's an issue, once I start getting some time on the whole long travel kit, I'll probably just swap it out, put these stock bolts back in it. But we'll try it for now and see. I got a lot of Loctite on there. It's torqued down. And then I obviously use my Revlock paint marker, or the Sherlock, to make sure I'll have a visual way to see if that bolt is coming loose. But let me show you that other box from Double E Racing. We'll get that piece put on there, and then we're gonna be ready for the wheels and tires. See if I can give you a little top-down version here. But this is a rear sway bar, obviously from Double E Racing. So I talked to George, and this sway bar has gone through a lot of testing on other Pro XPs in some short course races, but also in the GNCC style stuff. And they've had a lot of really good input. So he's made some adjustments and ended up with this new sway bar. And the reason I upgraded is the stock sway bar just, it's good. It's good, but it's not amazing. And they've got some different materials in this sway bar to make it a lot better, a lot stronger. But the big thing with it is it's adjustable. So you're able to kind of fine tune how stiff it is, which George has told me quite a bit about how I need to actually adjust it. So once we get it all unboxed here, whoa! That's one way to unbox it. Make sure that's everything. Yep. Oh. Okay. Their sway bar comes with new sway bar links, and obviously these are adjustable too. So you got adjustable lengths, which is nice. So obviously you've got one of those for either side. You got nice laser engraved the Double E Racing logo. Let's check this out. I'm assuming these are gonna be the bushings for the sway bar mount themselves, which is nice because I was looking at the other ones. Yeah, that's what these are. So I'll take those out of the bags later. I was looking at the stock ones, and those are kind of looking a little rough. And then these are what are actually adjustable. Whew, those are nice. So you've got your adjustable arms here. So there's, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 adjustable holes. So obviously your sway bar will bolt up here, and then your sway bar links will go here, and you can adjust. The farther away you are from the sway bar, the looser or softer it will be, and then the closer to the sway bar, the stiffer it'll be. And the way George explained this is you want it soft enough to where you're still comfortable, but the softer your sway bar is, the more traction you're actually gonna get, which is totally different than what I would think. But that's what he said. I'm gonna trust him. We're gonna mess with it and see what ends up working out for us. But we're gonna get it on. He gave me a good starting point, so we're gonna give that a shot. And then obviously, I'm sure once we get some time at the track, we're gonna learn more of what is comfortable for what we are doing. And have to make some changes maybe, but maybe not. We might be dialed in right away, and George has pretty good ideas of where these need to be set. So he's got a lot of experience making sure people are dialed in. So I'm sure I've got a pretty good starting point. And then obviously here is the actual sway bar. So it's a pretty slick piece. So we're gonna look at what it takes to get this thing bolted up and be ready to rock and roll. Alrighty guys, the sway bar is in, and man, this thing is pretty much just 100% beef, and it looks freaking sweet. That sweet Double E Racing logo on there. I wish it stuck out a little bit farther because it's kind of hard to see. It's kind of way tucked up in there, but it still looks freaking sweet. And I got it on the second to last hole. So we'll be able to adjust that if we need to, but that's gonna be my starting point. And this bar is just, it's so well built and thought out. Like everything about it, the way it all bolts together up here. He sends these two clamps. They're almost like a brake line clamp, but you put them on either side of your mount. So that way it keeps your sway bar from moving side to side. It kind of locks it in place there. But looks freaking legit. We are ready to put the wheels and tires on it. Alrighty, got her sitting on all four wheels and tires. And again, obviously, these are taller tires. These are my 32 Coyotes. I'll be putting 27-inch Hoosiers on here for short course, but it's looking freaking sweet. Obviously, I think all the wheels on the back ones actually ended up straightening out a little bit. I think this one might be tilted a little, not horrible. I thought that one was a lot worse. But the fronts, we need to adjust the tire rods just a little bit. They're just out, just a hair, not bad, but oh, she is looking sweet. It's nice and low. I need to run it because I think the shocks are still a little stiff. I think once I run it a little bit, it'll squat down kind of more towards its normal ride height, but it looks like a race car now. Like the way it's sitting, and just the aftermarket shocks, I think, which I guess they're still the same shocks, but rebuilt fully for short course. It just sits like a race car. And man, I am so stoked. That suspension, the sway bars, long travel, everything. I did start it up for a little bit and let that exhaust kind of cook because I did paint it with that high heat paint. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I've obviously got the RPM exhaust. I wanted to paint that just so it kind of blends in a little bit better. I left the header the same, but when I was bolting it back, my V-band clamp doesn't seem to be on correctly, which I don't know how you could put it in wrong, but there's definitely an exhaust leak there. So once it cools down completely, I'm gonna go in there, take that clamp off, see if I can mess with it, maybe put it on again, and see if that fixes the leak there. But the suspension is on, which means we gotta test drive it. The wife's not home today. I'm not supposed to drive it in the yard, but I'm gonna drive it in the yard. Alrighty, let's go out there. I'm gonna go kind of easy on it though, because it is still out of adjustment. We need to make sure all the wheels and tires are kind of lined up properly. I don't want to damage anything, put any unneeded stress on any of the components, because I want it fresh and clean for racing. But man, yeah. It's unbelievable just looking at it and seeing what I've been able to do. And again, like I haven't really gotten super far into the build, but just looking at it, seeing how far we've come, and all the hard work outside of actually the side-by-side, what we've had to do financially, the sacrifices there, but it's coming together. We're gonna hop in this thing and just putz around the yard a little bit, see what happens, see how it feels, and maybe get on it just a little bit. It definitely is nice and low. You can really feel it. I've got it in comfort mode, so we'll leave it in comfort and see what happens, but we'll just putz around a little bit. insane. Look at that freaking thing. Oh man, guys. It definitely rides stiff, but it is so sweet. That long travel, the suspension's definitely settled in now. Heck yeah, baby. Nice and wide, low in the back. The thing rips. I can't wait to get the little tires on it. Maybe throw a tune in there, little clutch work. We're gonna have to do some clutching, but I'll talk to you about that in just a second. Let me go get that razor. Whew, that was insane. I know I wasn't going super fast, but it's been a while since I've kind of even driven the razor, let alone, that's the first time I've ever driven a long travel Pro XP and ever driven a razor or anything that was set up for short course. So those shocks are definitely gonna be good on the track, but it's crazy because I had it in comfort mode and it was stiff. So I didn't even think about putting it in sport or firm, but that tells me that hopefully, even though comfort was pretty stiff, I'm hoping that like I'll be able to mess with that a little bit at the track, so I can qualifying or whatever, hopefully be able to see. I don't really know a whole lot of if it's, other than if it bottoms out, I'm not gonna know if it needs to be in a different mode. But George with Double E Racing, he might be able to help me out. Like if I say it's doing this, he might need to say, oh, we need to stiffen it up, so then I can try sport or firm mode. But dude, I cannot wait to see this thing in its final form. I've always loved the way short course side-by-sides look, which I know it's kind of hard to visualize the door and the rear fender and everything, but it is so much lower than what I'm used to. I mean, it's on 32-inch tires and it's still like my eyes are tall, like I am taller than it. Like before I was like level, my eyes were level with the roll cage, and now it's pretty intense. So it's just the stance and everything, and I have a visual of what it's gonna look like when it's done, and I just cannot wait. Can't wait to show you guys, show my experience racing. Whew. But yeah, that's gonna be a wrap on the suspension install and first test drive. So George, Double E Racing, hooking it up. Obviously, I think he probably nailed the tune. So thank you guys for watching this video. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Comment down below if you got any questions or you just wanna say how cool this freaking razor looks. But yeah, and I appreciate all the support, sharing it. If you wanna share this with some buddies, let them know. I will make sure to share my schedule of when I'm gonna be racing. So if you guys are local, you can come check me out, or you can just be looking for me on live streams or whatever else. But again, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.